Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. As you probably noticed, there's a British accent missing from this introduction. That's because I, Kristen Lavoie, Vice President of MD Publishing, am filling in for Linda, as she is currently at her citizenship ceremony. Congrats, Linda. Not only am I filling in for Linda, but I'm doing so from Baltimore, as I'm on site at the MD Expo, which kicks off tomorrow. There's lots to be excited, including today's webinar, which is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI. Let's get started by giving one lucky attendee a Webinar Wednesday t-shirt for answering this trivia question. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. In what year was the third week of October established as Male Breast Cancer Awareness Week? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I want to invite everyone to save the date for our upcoming 2020 conferences. First, our ICE conference will take place in Scottsdale, Arizona, February 9th through the 11th. More details can be found at www.attendice.com. And for our spring MD Expo, it will be taking place in Irvine, California, April 20th through the 22nd. More details can be found at mdexposhow.com. All right, and the winner of our Webinar Wednesday t-shirt is, let's see, we've got quite a few answers here. Looks like it's Paul Johnston. Congratulations, Paul. Linda will get that webinar t-shirt out to you. The correct answer is 2009. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, RTI Group. RTI provides complete quality assurance solutions for all X-ray modalities and facilities. Click and go solutions for your QA, your XRay QA. For more information, visit rtigroup.com. Our presenter today is Lee Evans, Global Manager, Distributor, and Partner Sales at RTI Group AB. Lee, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Kirsten. Hope you can all hear me okay. I'm talking to you today from about 50 miles west of London in England, United Kingdom. Lots going on here, but I don't think I'll bore you with that. I'll get straight on to ocean case studies. Oh, okay, so straight up, why QA? Why X-ray QA? Well, first up, it's compliance with regulations. We're looking to ensure optimum dose to the patient, and ultimately, it's systematic actions that you, as engineers and physicists, provide adequate confidence to the end users, so that when anybody uses their equipment, that they're confident that the dose they're giving is exactly what's required to provide the diagnosis. No more and hopefully no less. X-ray QA is carried out on CT, mammography, interventional, mobiles, so plenty for you to get your teeth stuck into. Who are our RTI? We're a pioneer in metrology, non-invasive KV and dose meters since 1981. I don't know if any of you can remember back to the old days of invasive measurements. And things have definitely moved on a pace there. And now a lot of the development and work is being done in QA software, and that's what we'll talk about today. We're a Swedish company based in Gothenburg in Sweden. Not a big company, but a very successful company and a leader in our field. And more importantly, probably for yourselves, is we have a direct team in New Jersey in the US. So yeah, and as well as that, we have a CAL lab in Sweden. We're looking to set up CAL labs in other places around the world, but probably more important for yourselves again is that we have a calibration lab based in New Jersey for you. So X-ray QA, this is probably something that you're used to seeing, different types of equipment here, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, QA software is the area for us that we're particularly interested in. Hopefully that you'll take away something from that today about QA software and how it can help you in your practice to become more efficient. The typical X-ray requirements, KV accuracy, reproducibility, MAS accuracy, reproducibility, linearity, maybe looking at half value layers, testing, but ultimately there has to be documentation of results. And if some of these terms are outside of your comfort zone, we've got a little terminology section at the back of the presentation as well that you can refer to. So who wants to know? Who wants to know what you're doing? Who wants to know what you're measuring? Regulatory bodies. So in that, I'd include the industry. It might be the manufacturer or the OEM or somebody who produces the tube. It could be at a state level. As we see, some states have different requirements to others. Obviously at a federal level, because they like to know what you're doing, and internationally as well. So we have organizations such as the International Atomic Energy Association. Yeah, probably what's of more interest to yourselves though is FDA requirements, and what we have, the regulation that we're gonna sort of guide through today is Part 1020. So this is the standards for ionizing radiation and equipment, limited equipment. There's a couple of there's quite a few things measured, but what we'll look at is two areas. Firstly, we look at reproducibility of dose, and the idea with this is that for each exposure for any exposure that's ever made at the same KV and MA, that you should result in the same image. Now, back in the old days, I remember when I qualified as a radiographer, there was voltage compensation, all sorts of different things, but you could end up with very different images on on the same equipment, not even on different equipment. So it's very important that when the end user comes to use the equipment, the output is exactly what they expect, and the dose given doesn't vary or doesn't vary by a certain amount. And in linearity, so this is where even at constant exposure, as we change MA and exposure time, that we actually then get, we should get a constant range of combinations. It should give us the constant amount of radiation, if you like. So typical X-ray procedure is testing what we see here. This is not in our labs. This is out in the field. Is that simply you locate the equipment in the beam, prepare for a visual reading of the values. So you either on a screen on the device or more increasingly on a remote screen, either via Bluetooth or wireless. So make the exposure, write down the value, and then probably some form of manual post-processing to get your results. So what I'll run through is how we see that going on one of our units, which is in a Piranha. So this would be the first exposure, and this is a screenshot from our software, which is called Ocean Connect. This is ours, but if you're looking at somebody else's equipment, you probably see similar values presented in a similar fashion. So we've got the first exposure we've made, that gives us a straightforward KV and exposure. We're recording the exposure rate, so we're going to note down that value. I can't even read. That's 34.25. Okay, then we get the next exposure. So a slight variation there on the tube voltage, and a slight variation on the exposure there. So we proceed on, and as the FDA 1020 shows us, we're looking for 10 of these exposures. So as we slowly go through, obviously in real time, I'll talk a bit because in real time this would take a little bit longer than we're going to show you today. You need to, mainly because you'd have to find your pen first and then write it down. But okay, so we're on to 5. Still making a note, and then we're up to 6. You can see where this is going. 7. Exposure 8. Note that down. Exposure 9. Yeah, no prizes. 10. So what do we do with these figures? So if we think back to Regulation 1020 from the FDA, we should be looking for to determine a pass or fail parameter. And in here on reproducibility, we have this formula that I showed my children earlier, actually, and they were very impressed that the daddy deals in this type of stuff, although my wife wasn't. So what we're looking here is standard deviation. We're looking at a mean value, and obviously the sample numbers and the observations that are provided as well. So if we come in, if we sum, this gives us, and then we look at the mean value. Obviously that's divided by 10 exposures. If that's the number you've made, that's the minimum you should be making. And then you come to calculate standard deviation. Now, most people I know would use an Excel spreadsheet for this, just to make it a bit easier, if you like. But then there is also the possibility of making errors, because if you're transcribing firstly from the screen to a piece of paper and then into Excel, or even going direct, there are errors in transcription. And then we're looking to calculate the coefficient values and the coefficient variant, and then we get a result of 0.041. So that's within the range that we should be looking at, and happy days. So, as I mentioned, as I touched on earlier, there are problems with this method, and I know from some of the big manufacturers that this is an issue with their engineers, is that mistakes are made. Your phone goes off when you're writing down. Somebody comes into the room, you put something in the wrong column. So there are transcription errors all the time, and that can have an impact on your result, which then, if you're then going to repeat these exposures, that adds time, and that impacts your efficiency. So what we propose with RTI is an alternative method. So we use a meter with a Bluetooth connection, so that it goes directly to either to your laptop or to a tablet device. We produce a custom template. Analysis is already built in, and then at the end of it, we can produce a report in real time. So if we follow the same method, so this is our ocean screen, we can build ourselves a template very quickly. So we decide what we want to do, which is to create a new real-time display. We then set up the exposures that we're going to make. And then here we have, if you see the blue line on the left-hand side, this is ready to record the exposures as they're made. On the bottom right-hand side, you'll see, you'll see a summary with no analysis, because obviously we've not made an exposure. And also, we can add to that. So obviously there's 10 exposures required by FDA 1020. So we need to add another 9 rows. So we can do that quite simply, just like that. So we've got the grid now at our required 10 rows. We can also set up our summary so that we show our summary as we go along. This means that, as you'll see, you'll get an instant result on your figure. So we decided that the analysis is reproducibility, was our first measurement. We've set a value for parameter for exposure, and we've set our deviation on our coefficient of variation as well. And that's it done. So straight away on the bottom right, you can see that the summary, the analysis is there. Obviously there's no figures because we've not made an exposure. So as we go through and make our exposures, you'll see okay, yeah, we'll save that. Okay, well, that's where we've saved it. We can also build up a library of templates as well. I should add there that it's not just, it doesn't forget. Once you've assigned these once you've assigned a template into the library, they're there forever for the life of the database. Okay, and we're ready to go. So we make our first measurement. Obviously we pass because we've got no variation. But you can see on the left-hand side where we've got our first row with our first parameters coming in, and then on the bottom right you can see that we've got our coefficient and we've got our mean being recorded straight away. So as we go through these measurements in real time, and I suppose for a dramatic effect, I could now I could get my wife to call me, and which would mean that I'd forgotten what I've done, but I won't in this instance. One, because she's taking the children to piano lessons, but secondly, joking aside, this is where Ocean comes into its own, because even if you do get disturbed, even if you do stop making measurements, they're there and they're recorded in the right row and the right column. Okay, so we're back into the room, continuing to make measurements. So we're at exposure 4, 5, 6, 7. As you see on the bottom right, summary is changing all the time as we bring in more figures and more measurements. 9 and then 10. So we've got our 10 measurements there. So what do we do with that? Well, we've got the immediate report. We've seen that in as we've gone along. That report now, we can then produce something which we can either store ourselves, which obviously it's stored within the equipment, within the database. But we could also then print that and share it with the end user or the customer. And I think there's a value to that. You know, it's presented in a particular format, and you can also add in annotations as well, or maybe even put in your own logos. So we save those measurements, give it a custom file name so that we can find it at a later date. And this may refer to the room, or it may even refer also to the, not just to the time, but also to the establishment that maybe you're making the measurements in. And there we go. And it's saved within the measurement tab within that day's work. Okay, we come back to linearity. So we're going to look at the effect of MA, and we're going to go with fixed KV, but actually two MA type of two sets of MA measurements as well. So just using quick check. This is without using Ocean Professional. So what we see then is, again, you know, we need to make those exposures. So we're keeping as we go through. So we've got 4, 5, 6, again all the way through. If you're not using Ocean Professional, you'd be looking to record these measurements, either writing them down or putting them directly into an Excel spreadsheet in your laptop or on a tablet. And then we come out at 10. And then, of course, on the second set, we then need to change the MA again. So we revert to the other measurement. And then again, through the 10 again. And as I said, recording these measurements, you know, in real time, you know, in the old-fashioned way, pencil and paper, pen, or maybe directly into Excel. 8, 9, and then up to 10. And here we've put it into an Excel type measurement where you know, hopefully the transcription has been fair and accurate, and that gives you the correct value to pass 1020.31 of the FDA regulation. And then again, the method that we would propose is a lot more efficient once you're set up, and the setup is relatively simple. We'll go through that as well. So we go into the measurement setup. So we're looking at an exposure. We've got a very basic template like we had previously, and then we add a row. So we set in this one we set our MA. So we set the MA at 24, MAS, sorry, and then we add our rows as we did previously. So we add 10 rows as we did. There's our 10 identical rows with a set MAS of 24. And now we can actually add another set of 10. So we put in the 11th figure of 30. And then we can add another 9 to that. So that's our second set of measurements now include 10 of one and 10 of the other. So we're good to go on that. But also, we can show the summary. So we tick the summary box. So that will give us some analysis as we go along. So in this time, we can, so we previously, we ticked the reproducibility box. This time, we're looking at MA linearity. So again, we would tick, so this time we will tick MA linearity. And then set the value for that, and set a difference between the steps and what we're looking for as well, the parameters. And there's a reminder of the linearity, what you're looking to do, what the objective of this measurement is, and what the standard and the requirement that you're looking to produce. And we're ready to go. So we've set the maximum difference between, so that's 10%. We've saved that template so that we can we can use it again, and we're ready to go. So we'll save as we go along. As you'll see in the bottom right-hand analysis box, the summary is starting to be generated. Obviously, there's no figures in there because we've not made the exposure. So we've now got a library building up actually here of different measurements. So here we go. So we make our first measurement. Straight away, obviously, we come with a pass because there is no comparison. And as we go through the measurements, 3 and 4, 5, you can take that call from whoever rings you at whatever time of the day it is there. Up to 7, 8, 9, still showing passes. Obviously, if there was an issue, then we may see a fail as we fall outside of the 10% parameter. So we're up to 9. Now we're up to 10. And then, of course, as if you remember earlier, we set row 11 and beyond for the next 10 to be at a value of 30. So the next set of measurements will be at a slightly different MA, and this will give us our linearity measurement. And again, so we scroll through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then finally 10, and the whole thing has passed. So we're quite happy with that. We can then, we've obviously seen a preview of the report on we can generate that report from the information recorded in the tests, and also in the bottom right-hand summary that we've seen as we've proceeded. So you know there's nothing wrong. You know you've made the correct number of measurements. There's no, did I write that down? Did I do 19? Did I do 20? Did I finish it? That doesn't look right. So all that confidence that you're losing through transcription errors or through working in the environment that you may be in that's causing you problems, it's all gone. The measurements are recorded all automatically. You've told it what it wants, what it needs to produce. You're taking the measurements straight from the meter, straight in, as accurate as they should be, and then you get a report at the end of it. So the report there is obviously for the linearity, and as expected, we've passed for this piece of equipment. But what we can then do is, obviously, as I said earlier, you know, we could issue this report with the equipment. It could either be stored somewhere or actually given to the customer or kept in your own files. Obviously, there's an electronic version kept within the database. We make sure we save that. And again, we save it. These are all time-stamped, but you could actually save them as a particular room or a particular establishment. And there they're stored. Now, one of the other things that we can now do now is that we can go back and we can add into our linearity report our earlier reproducibility results. So we can set up the type of analysis that we require. Establish the pass-fail. And results in summary. And scroll through those details, and there we are. We've now brought we can then combine the two sets of results for linearity and reproducibility into the same report. And I think that for the customer has a lot of value. All the information kept in one place. Good use of visual graphics to see that there's a pass straight away. There's no question that there's of any failures. Also within the report, within Ocean, you could add other parameters as well that we've seen on the drop downs, or you could even add user-defined inputs from within the room itself, where may be related to state of the equipment, or perhaps radiation protection features within the room as well. So the report can be as comprehensive as you wish, or as basic. So it could be one basic measurement which has a certain value, or you can add to those measurements to add more value, which means that you know, you can then monetize the the report in the eyes of the customer, which obviously adds to your business case. And there you go. So I think that was quite simple. There's some terminology here, what we talked about through the presentation. So reproducibility, linearity, half value, computed tomography measurements, automatic exposure chamber measurements. And yeah, so I think that's a good point to stop, actually. That should be just on the 30 minutes there.
Excellent. Thank you, Lee. That was great. Great and informative webinar. And thanks again to our sponsor, RTI Group. We've got a couple of questions that have come through from the audience, and we've got time to answer them. So I'm going to go ahead and read those and let you tackle them one at a time.
Okay.
The first one here.
Yeah.
I use the free software version, Ocean Connect. How easy is it to upgrade to Ocean Professional so I can perform a more in-depth reporting or customized report? And do you offer a free trial?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is if you're using Ocean Connect, you're obviously seeing the value of the software as such, and also I suppose in some ways there's a taster within there as well that you can see. From this you can see there's potential. It's very simple actually. Within Connect itself, there is actually a trial tab. So if you click on the trial tab, you then get 30 days trial with the professional software. I don't think you need 30 days actually. I think my experience and experience of the guys in the States is that 1 or 2 sessions with Ocean, and the eyes light up, if you like, because what you realize is that it gives you back so much more time than just recording the measurements, shall we say. It just gives you back so much more time to do other things. What you do is up to yourself, so obviously. But yeah, there is a free trial within the Ocean Connect package.
Excellent. Okay, our second question here. If I use Excel for QA reports now, what does Ocean software do that Excel can't?
It can do it in real time. It removes the transcription errors that you get with any sort of movement into Excel. It's live. Excel is, once it's created, that's it. It can take a lot of time to create. I would say because of the built-in templates within Ocean, there isn't the error you can make. I know I've seen some guys using Excel, and once you get an error in there, it's very difficult to get it out actually. So I think that Ocean offers a lot more than Excel. It's also future-proof in the way that, if you take on, say, different measurements, a different business or a different territory, you can then bring in those measurements using the formula that are already contained within Ocean that we prepared. Also with Ocean, you can, once the measurements are in there, they're in there. There's no need to do any sort of adjustments. But if you move between manufacturers and they ask to change maybe 1 or 2 of the parameters, it's very easy to do that within Ocean. In Excel, I've seen quite a few engineers over time, forget to put the correct value in for a different manufacturer, and then come out with a very different report. So with Ocean over Excel, it's a much more robust and sophisticated system, but it's very, very intuitive and simple to use. And as I say, the idea is that it cuts down on mistakes, but improves your efficiency as well.
Great. We've got time for another question or so. This one, I manage multiple sites. How does the software help me keep them in order?
Okay. I maybe should have mentioned that earlier. Sorry. When you're using Ocean, as we touched on, you can label the files in any particular way that you wish. You can also group them together. So if you visit one particular establishment, you can group their rooms, if you like, and their equipment into one particular file, and they're there and they can be shared across your group as well, so that anyone within the organization has access to those. There's no confidential information as such, and they're no identifiable. So it means that, you know, when you take, you know, if your business is growing or you're expecting it to grow, you can quite easily bring into the database information and then perform the measurements in whichever hospital or organization you go to. I think that's something that with Excel is, you know, it's more difficult to do. With Ocean, you just create a new file, and as long as you and the files, if somebody else has already been to that particular room in that particular establishment, the data is already in that file for you. So yeah, there's nothing to stop you going. And in fact, I would almost say that with Ocean, it encourages you to do more rooms almost. That's a bold claim.
Excellent. Okay, announcement to the attendees. If you did submit a question and we didn't get to it today, all of those questions will be emailed to Lee, and he will be answering those offline. We're going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar with another thank you to Lee for a great presentation, and of course a thank you to today's sponsor, RTI Group. Just a reminder that the post-webinar survey and certificate process is now automated, so the survey link will be included in the follow-up email, which you will receive in about an hour's time. Once you have completed the survey, you will be able to download your certificate immediately. One lucky attendee will win an Amazon gift card for completing the survey. If you have any questions, please contact us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We hope you join us for next week's webinar, an introduction to vital signs and monitor testing. For more information about our upcoming webinars, please visit our website at webinarwednesday.live. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.